Hi, we're back here in our scene after having created a reflection probe. And in this little scene, again, with an example of a few different lights, we're going to create a light probe group. I'm going to tell you how and why and where you should place light probes. Okay, so we've already seen why we would want a reflection probe to give us our shiny objects here, accurate reflections when using baked lighting. Okay, we also want to have light probes, which light probes pick up light from baked lights and skyboxes and other things when you have a dynamic object. So before in our scenario, let me go back here to this side instead. Now give us a little different perspective. I had before added a cube and a sphere before I added the reflection probe, and both of these were marked static. Okay, so we know that they're not going to be moving. But what happens if I want an object to be moving through an area that I have baked in a light map? But I would like the light to react to it in a more realistic way without having to use real-time lights. One solution is to actually use a real-time light, like a point light or a spotlight put on real time, so that as your object, your game object moves through it, the light and shadows will react in a normal manner. Now, if you're using this object on, say, a mobile game, and you have very small processing power on the phone, you want to be able to use these light probes, which save the processing power. Okay, if you're doing it on a much larger version, you only have one or two objects, using real-time lights is a distinct possibility. But let's say you have an area light that can only be used baked, like we have here. I'm going to show you how you can add light probes which allow the ambient light that's around to affect your object. So what I've done is I've added this third object here, and I've called it a bouncy ball. Now, in order to make it bounce, I've done a few things. First, I created a physics material by right-clicking, create, and then you go down to physics material here, okay? And when I've created this material, I have put it, this is physics material is basically a material you apply to your to your collider on an object that has a rigid body to affect how it interacts with other materials, with other objects with colliders. So what I did is I took off any friction and I made the bounciness at its maximum at 1. Okay. And on my object here, in my collider, my sphere collider, I used in the slot here the bouncing material. I just dragged and dropped it right in here, okay? Now, that'll give some bounciness, but it's going to be reacting with the floor. So on the floor, I also added the bouncy material to the floor. If you want to learn a little bit more about physics materials, I'm going to put it in the link to explain them fully, how you can use them for things like sliding down ramps, um, objects moving one against the other. And this is all without animation. It's just how two surfaces react to each other. Okay. So now that I've added these two super bouncy materials to the floor and to the ball, and if you look on my rigid body, I put it at a very little mass. And when I click play, it bounces up and down until I stop it. Okay. Now, one thing you'll notice when it's bouncing here, let's look in our game view, you can see that the light is not changing at all as it moves past this brighter area light, okay, because it's a baked light. Now, in order for it to react with this baked light, we need to add this light probe group. I have already added one completely done and turned it off to make things a little faster, but I'm going to show you how you do it. these light probes basically pick up all the lighting information within a given area and put it on the objects around them. So you right click in your hierarchy and you go to light and you add light probe group. And you'll start seeing this box of 8 probes. This is what they look like right here. And here's what their gizmo looks like. Okay. Now we want to be able to edit this. So once I click on this, I want to be able to select it. Sometimes you'll see like the edit button here will have to be engaged. So make sure that you change it. You can see it says light probes right there. It's a little gizmo. Edit my light probes, right? So I am going to actually go ahead and say I'm going to select some by left clicking and dragging over them because we want to fill this entire area with light probes. And I'm going to duplicate and then move them slightly. So what I'm going to try and do is attempt to fill up the entire inside of this room with these probes by duplicating and moving them over and creating a like a lattice that fills of these little probes that fill up the entire room. Okay, so instead of doing this one by one for you and taking a long time by doing this and doing this, I'm going to show you one that I already completed. So it's not that difficult. You just have to copy paste and end up filling up the whole room with these. So I'm going to turn off this one and turn on the one that I've already completed. So you can see in here, I have filled this entire room, the inside of this room, with light probes. There's a few empty spaces. I could fill those up more if I wanted to. A few are in the floor and other places. If they're in the floor, they won't react to the light that's around them because there's nothing in them if they're buried inside of a wall. So you really want them to be either fully inside of a wall or fully on the other side of a wall, which I can put some on the outside of a wall as well because they will bring some of that light into there. Maybe I'll do that just so that you can see how I can do it here. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to select all of these light probes here. And I'm going to duplicate selected and I will move them out beyond the wall. And I will duplicate again and bring them up out here outside the wall. Okay, so now I even have some outside the wall, which is great as well because it's bringing in some more of the light from the outside. Anything that's buried in the wall, of course, will not be working. You can shift and select them individually and delete them, but it's not always necessary. Like I can take these here, for example, and just slightly move them out, adjust them all so they're not buried inside of walls. There's no point in having them in walls because they don't pick up any of the light around and give lighting information into where we want to have it. Okay, I had to restart my game, save and restart it so that it could fix itself. But anyways, here's my pink ball. You can see my real light outside is affecting the shadows. I'm bringing it into my scene here. I think that will be okay. Need to be able to see it working. Okay, and I'm going to reorient my camera a little bit so you can see it a little bit closer. And I'm going to say Control Command on the Mac or Control on Windows, Shift F to refocus. Oops. While I have my camera selected to refocus my camera view, you can see my camera view shifted over here. Okay, and I will one more time regenerate lighting. It's down below, regenerating. Okay, you can instantly see the change that the light probes had on my ball. It changed completely different color. So if I had my light probe group, for example, turned off and regenerated the lighting, it would go back to that dull color. But I want to keep my light probes on, and I rebaked my map. And now it's this bright pink color because it's receiving reflections from all around, including the reflection probe and the light that it's picking up, ambient light from everywhere. So now if I hit play, I believe you can see the changes in the way the ball is being lit as it moves through space. See if I can see it in here better. So you can see it as it's reflected on the sides. You see a little warping here, and that's just because of the bouncy material and the way that it was applied instead of it being used um, through an animation, for example. So this is what light probes do, and the reason you might want to use them when you have a baked material, a baked lighting put into your scene. I want to add one more note that when you have your light probe group turned on and after you've generated lighting, when you select on the object, you will see what light probes are affecting your dynamic objects moving through the scene. So you can see that these three light probes are affecting my object, but as I move it through space, you can see the other light probes that are affecting it nearby. So this is one of the reasons that you want to have so many light probes within your space, is so that you have multiple light probes hitting your object and the area around it that it's passing through, because that's the information of the lighting that it's picking up as it passes through the light. You can see the little bit of reflection right there happening now that it's starting to move outside and into the cookie of the other light. Okay. So this is why we add light probes.